Hi, I'm April Hugh. I'm with Century 21 Hometown Realty.
And I'm Miko Nehman with Century 21 Hometown Realty. And we have Dan Smith here with First Choice Property Management. Welcome.
Dan.
Thank you.
So tell us
a little bit about your background.
My background, I've been in the real estate industry for 20 years. Actually, this month is 20 years. I've been in the business. Before that, I'm a plumber by trade. I plumbed for 18 years, had my own business.
Well, you just told us how old you are.
Yeah, I started young.
Okay, 12.
I got out of the plumbing business and got into the real estate business, had some medical issues in the plumbing business. But at 36, I already had 18 years in the plumbing business.
Wow.
So when I got into real estate, I started with Century 21, you guys. Well, Century 21 Advantage. And, you know, when the market got to where it got in 2008, I thought about going back into the plumbing business because I still have my license. Right. But instead I went and got my broker's license and started this property management business. And we opened up in 2009. So we're about 12 years old now. And then eventually opened Smith Real Estate also. We do very little real estate. It's mainly just property management.
Yeah. Well, congratulations to you on that, Dan.
Because
I remember you building it up, and whenever I run into you, to go, yeah, we have such and such many properties, and
that's awesome.
It just seemed to be.
It's a slow-growing business, and it's very, you know, it's word of mouth, but it's slow-growing,
But it's demanding too.
I know.
Sales, real estate sales is sales. Management is a service business. So they're two different businesses, two different types of businesses, yeah.
So because right now there's no inventory with rentals, how's that working?
Well, right now we have 2 units available. That's all we have. And we just recently went through 3 months with no vacancies. Wow. I think with the COVID and everything, people they want to stay in place. Right. They do not want to move around. Right. You know, it's expensive to move. Because before you get your deposit back, your next place you got to have the first month's rent and a deposit. And in these times, you may be looking at $5,000 or $6,000 just to move, and then you still got your deposit tied up. That's a lot of money for people in this area.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, it's a lot of money, period. Well, yeah. So.
Okay. So, you know, the hot topic of today is this, you know, the eviction moratorium that we've been. It seems to be, you know, extending, and you had mentioned briefly that there's, you know, there's been a lot of changes also every time.
Yeah, it seems like it's changing constantly. Yeah. You know, when we get to the end of where the governor says, hey, we're going to end it on this date, it gets pushed back 30 days or 3 months. Right. In this case, now it got pushed back to the end of September, October 1st. So there's no rules, there's no plan. It's just everybody's just kind of winging it, I think, as far as landlords and property managers.
So then once the evictions get back into play, then where do the people go? I mean, can they attempt to make up all that money?
Well, I don't think a lot of them are going to make that money up. Yeah. I think the owners are going to take it in the pocketbook on that. Other thing to keep in mind, I spoke with a couple of attorneys that I deal with for evictions and stuff, just to keep up. Well, if people stop paying rent in March of 20 or April of 20, and those evictions have already gotten started and stuff, you're going to get behind all those people when they say you can evict again. Right. So it's going to take, even if they say, okay, we can evict people starting tomorrow, it's going to be a long process, and it's not going to be like a normal eviction. If someone didn't pay their rent, I could probably have them out in 40 days. I don't think it's going to be that. Yeah.
Okay, so just because of the protection that's given to these tenants, right, with this eviction, now do they have to qualify? I mean, is there any way to evict them legally?
You can. There's certain ways you can evict them, but it's not as easy as it sounds. Okay. You have to go through the proper steps. You have to serve them, which used to be like a 3-day notice to pay or quit. Now it's a 15-day notice to pay or quit. And that depends on what months are they missing their rents on. Okay. So there's a different form. So if you're behind on your rent, you haven't paid rent from March of 20 through September of 21, there's one form, and or through September of 20. Then there's another form to go from September 20 through the end of September 21. So it depends on that. Then there's another form you have to give them besides that to let them be aware of that there's assistance out there and stuff like that. So there's certain ways you can proceed, but then you still got the cost. I mean, it's almost like when I called the attorneys, CAR, California Association of Realtors Attorneys, it was almost like when they explained everything to me on the phone, I said, that's kind of like a circle. You just go, and they just kind of laughed at that conversation, because it's kind of like, what do you do?
So everybody's kind of not struggling as to what to do.
Yeah. Everything's still so new.
Mm-hmm.
So, I mean, I know some property owners that have given eviction to their tenants, and the tenants have moved out, and this has been, I mean, it's weird. I don't know if just the tenants are not,
Well, they're lucky, and they're,
just kind of, I mean, it's not my business to get involved with that, but at the same time, it was like interesting. There wasn't any problems, but then, there's, of course, a lot of people are having problems.
Dan and I had a conversation. I told him that I had just listened to a podcast by Susie Orman, and this was right at the end of July, and this was right when the moratorium was being lifted, before they extended it. She's predicting tent cities for all these people.
Oh, like they have in LA,
that's what she predicts. I thought that was interesting.
Well, we'll see what happens.
Yeah.
I mean, it's just everything is so limited. There's a limited amount of rentals, there's a limit of housing. I mean, we're just like.
Yeah, I mean, there's limited. You can't of all the rules. Just to basically, you can raise rents. So you can raise rents. That's almost the only rule that is still in effect. But then there's, some owners don't want to raise rents because they're afraid of what the tenant might do.
They say might not stop paying, right? Yeah. So how much can you raise the rent?
Well, yesterday I spoke with CAR just to get an update, and right now, if they're month to month, you can raise their rent up to 10% of what it was 12 months prior. So, for instance, if it was $1,650 a year ago, that's the most you can raise it. It's 10% of that, which would be $165. But there's different guidelines too of how you can raise rent, or who can be raised rent. If it's apartments or duplexes, triplexes, fourplexes, that's one set of rules. Single family homes, it depends on how title's held. If it's owned by a corporation, LLC. Yeah, the new adjusted rent and just clause eviction forms that came out, the laws came out, I believe it was in 19. So if you hold title as a single person, okay, you can basically, this is all before COVID, you could do whatever you wanted to. You could raise the rent, up to 10% with a 30-day notice, up to 60%, over that with a 60-day notice. As long as they're in a month-to-month agreement. Okay.
But then if you have a 1-year lease with somebody to begin with, and then you renew the lease after the end of that year, I mean, you'd have to let them go to a month-to-month in order to.
Yeah, they'd have to have defaulted to a month-to-month, correct.
Isn't that pretty standard though?
Pretty standard. Not very few tenants want to sign up for another lease. When you explain to them, hey, your lease is up, what do you want to do? Month-to-month, or most of them will just choose to stay month-to-month.
Sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt.
No, that's fine. So in those situations, if it's held by an LLC, a partnership, or a corporation,
Right.
you can only raise the rent 5% a year plus the cost of living, period. A duplex, triplex, fourplex, if one of the owners, if it's owned by an individual and they live in one of the units as their primary residence, those rules don't apply.
Oh.
Yeah.
Okay, so what can they do if those rules don't apply?
If they're living on site, then it's just like it's a regular house. They can raise their rents accordingly.
Can they give evictions?
No.
Okay.
No one can be evicted.
Does it matter if it's a trust?
No, it does not matter if it's a trust.
Okay.
Like if Miko Nehman's trust.
Right,
That's
right.
just like you owning it as Miko
an
Nehman.
individual.
Yeah.
And then what about the, I just lost my thought, condos and
Those are all under the same.
single family?
Yes.
Okay.
So I just recently met with a client, and he has been trying for a year. Before COVID, he wanted to give the tenants notice. Well, just after a year and a half, he finally was able to. them to move out. Now, this was after he had asked to go inspect the property, and these people were unbelievable. They were hoarders. They had 4 children that, and just the filth of this place. I mean, the CPS was, so there were some other legal aspects to this. Well, he finally said, well, I'm going to come, I need to do an inspection on the property. And at that point, because of just this battle, and they were behind 4 months on their rent. And they just said, oh, we're just moving out. So that was how he actually got them to leave. Was because
he's lucky, huh?
Yeah. So I mean, but he has like attorneys. I mean, he was.
Well, as far as getting people to leave, when I spoke with Carr, there are a couple ways you can give people notices to leave. If they're not in a lease, if they're in a lease, you got to honor it. Okay. If you're going to put the property up on the market for sale.
Okay.
Okay. If you're going to ask them to leave because a family member is moving in.
Right.
Or you're going to take the property off of the market as a rental, period, or it's condemned for inhabitability. Okay. You can give notices if any of those 4 items apply.
Okay, that's really good to know, actually.
And there was one point a couple months ago that we talked, and it was if you put it on the market for sale, the person that was making the offer on it had to live in it, right?
Had to be owner occupied.
Right.
That's what I was told by Carr at that point.
Yeah. Is that the same too?
As far as I know,
Okay.
it has to
But
be an owner
it can
occupied
be
property.
investor as long as they keep the
Yeah,
keep the
if
tenant.
they kept the tenant, yeah.
Oh, true, yeah.
Yeah.
So I don't know that. I mean,
Well, what they can, doesn't mean it's the legal way to do it, but if they're managing their own thing, maybe they don't know and they're just
yeah,
doing
yeah.
it,
So
but if you have a business, you better,
you better do it by the
Yeah.
rules, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, definitely.
you know.
So do you have any thoughts or ideas, or what do you tell your clients, your property owners, and how should they protect themselves?
Well, I think the best way to protect yourself if you have a vacant unit and you want to put a new tenant in, is screening. Screening is the most important thing there is. Because once you give them the keys, they got all the power, even in a normal situation.
Sure.
Screening, that'd be the best thing.
Checking the
Checking.
What do you check when you screen somebody? What do you check?
We're running background checks, credit checks, verifying employment, verifying rental history. And one thing we started doing a couple years ago, I look for them on Facebook.
Yep.
I plug their name in, their numbers in, and you'd be surprised what you'd find.
Yep.
The way that people will portray themselves versus what you see how they're living could be, totally different. So that's helped us out a lot in weeding people out. But screening is the most important part.
Are you kind of leery to rent to people that have restaurant jobs and things? Or depends on what their positions are?
It just
or-
depends. I mean, since it's all, we probably haven't had, I don't know, in the last 18 months, we haven't had that much turnover, so we haven't had to deal with it.
Right.
But we do, the 2 or 3 tenants that we have that are behind, they were in the restaurant industry. They're mostly servers, But for the most part, I think, a tenant will pay their rent. They know eventually it's going to come back at them.
Well, it's going to affect you down
Yeah,
the line.
down
when
the
you try
road.
to go rent your next
Yeah.
place.
Yes.
You're
It's
not
like,
going to be able to
think
give a
about-
good reference.
Right.
Yeah.
Think about
Yeah.
the consequences
Yeah.
ahead.
This isn't like,
just
free willy time here.
Right. Yeah. So it's just a different time right now. Yeah.
Well, so if a tenant does lose their job, what should they do?
Well, I think they should communicate with the landlord or manager as soon as they can
Right.
and make them aware. I have a couple tenants they'll tell me, hey, I'm going to be late a few days or something like that. I mean, that goes a long ways with people. Communication, it's the communication thing.
Yes.
So if you're communicating, just don't ignore me. Don't ignore my texts. Don't ignore my phone calls, because then I'm going to come knock on your door.
Yes.
Because you're not calling me back, so what's going on?
Right.
That's the best thing, is communication in anything, just keeping communication. And a lot of times owners will agree, things happen, or they'll be happy because things happen, life happens. My paycheck didn't get here in time. And, of our tenants, the way we run the business, the rent's due on the 1st, it's late on the 6th.
Yep.
After that, there's a late fee, and we're going to a 3-day notice, basically.
Yeah.
but I'll have the same half a dozen tenants running in on the last minute, every month. But then I'll have some that they're on time every month. And if they're late, I'm not going to charge them a late fee because I know something happened. So, and they're communicating.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
So do you see any end in sight with this? I mean, the whole eviction moratorium being lifted.
I don't know. It could be at the end of the month. It might not be. The last month when I spoke with Carr about this, I asked the girl, "What do you think is going to happen?" She goes, "Oh, I think it's going to be over by the end of July." That's what the Carr attorney told me. And look what happened. So I don't think anybody knows.
Now the actual rents are at an all-time high right now.
Yeah.
Are you just shocked?
Well, yeah. Every time, what I think I can get, I'll tell an owner and what they want, and we'll try. Okay, I'll try anything. If you're the owner, and a lot of times we'll get it. We just rented a place out in the newer homes over there by the Highway Patrol Station. He converted. It was all legal, all permitted. An ADU. The garage was converted. So it's two-car garage, so it's 400 square feet. Mm-hmm. We got $1,700 a month for that. Wow. It included utilities, but just a guy and his son, $1,700 a month. Wow. And I would have never,
expected to get that much.
7-8 years ago, you could get houses on the south end of town for 15. Yeah. So this was it was 400 square feet. Yeah. I don't know. It's just supply and demand, I think. Yeah. And then if the market turns, the real estate sales market turns, and we start getting foreclosures or whatnot, I think it may be higher because all these people, or if they get foreclosed on.
That happened in 07.
Yeah, 07, 08.
When they
So
were losing their homes, the rent. That's when I remember. That's when the rental market just went.
Yeah.
Yep.
So there's a shortage here. I mean, if I had another 20 homes, we could probably get them rented in the next 2 weeks. Or we would have a lot of work, but I mean, there's plenty of. We'll have an open house or something like that, and showings, and they'll be maybe not at that particular showing, but on a particular home, we may have 20 groups of people trying to get one house. Yeah.
And your phone's just ringing nonstop.
Yeah, it's a point where okay, we're not taking any more applications because you just can't process them all.
No,
yeah.
No, absolutely.
Wow.
Well, this has been great information, Dan. We appreciate you
Sure.
being here.
Thanks for having me.
Thanks for taking the time, Dan.